Episode number 559 of Robservations is brought to you by the first annual Intergalactic Imagination Connoisseurs Film Festival. There's less than 2 weeks left to enter your film. You made a film, right? I mean, you didn't just think about it. You actually made it. You're finishing up post, and we're going to get to see it in the next half. Let's say week and a half, right? Don't tell me no. Well, greetings, Imagination Connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, your master of fun and wonder, your viceroy of verisimilitude, and your sommelier of sci-fi or cinema, your archbishop of Banterbury, your chancellor of cheerfulness, your pharaoh of physical media, and, of course, your existential Mr. Rogers, Robert Meyer Burnett, coming at you. Robcasting it, you imagination connoisseurs, you members of this, the Post-Geek Singularity community. Welcome to another episode of Robservations. I can't believe we're at episode 559. Can you imagine if I had produced a television show that had run 559 episodes? Do you know how rich I would be? Do you know how much money I would have? A lot. That means I would at least have an awesome glass case that had all of the Hot Toys figures that existed in my life. And whenever I think of getting rich, I don't think about being a captain of industry or owning a big house somewhere. I really pretty much think about Hot Toys, which is pretty stupid because I really should think about having a domicile that could, have a great screening room in it and a place to put glass cases full of Hot Toys figures, preferably both in the same place. You just never know. Anyway, today, some good stuff. People have said to me recently, Rob, your normal cheerful self, you've been a little bit too political and you're a little bit too down on Discovery. We miss the chancellor of cheerfulness. Why haven't you been excited about something? Well, I am, but in the world you got to change it up a bit. And usually there's something to be excited about all the time. Like all the time. Like, why wouldn't you want to be excited about something? Well, I got to tell you folks, something dropped today. I mean, it's not like a spoiler because it's the title of today's show. That all I am is beyond excited about it, and I figured, why not just celebrate the love? Go, yub nub all. I'm gonna yub nub this up. We can either flash dance something up, or I'm gonna celebrate the love, just like the Ewoks did. And I'm gonna celebrate first. I gotta set the stage. I gotta set the stage for you. So, I'm a fanatical Stephen King fan. Like amongst many other things that I'm a fanatic of, I love Stephen King, and I love dark fantasy. I love horror fiction. You can't really see, but you can see like my Dark Harvest Night Visions books up there, and I'm a huge fan. I got lots of first edition hardcovers of dark fantasy and science fiction, but mostly horror novels. And really, the only autographs that I collect are authors, and whenever I get an author to sign a book for me, I don't just have them sign their name. I want it inscribed, to Robert, some maybe pithy remark, and then my name. Well, I want to say that I discovered Stephen King. I want to say it was Night Shift that I bought the blue covered. I still have it. It's somewhere. The blue covered. The what is it? Was it I Am the Doorway or Jerusalem's Lot with the eyeballs in the hands? It's the blue cover of Night Shift, the first paperback of Night Shift. I think that was the first Stephen King book that I read, if memory serves. As a result of that, I was a member of the Science Fiction Book Club, as many people from this show know. I became a member of the Science Fiction Book Club when I was 10 years old. I was in the 4th grade, Mrs. Walton's 4th grade class at Island Park Elementary School. And one of the things that I got from the Science Fiction Book Club, I got a lot of stuff from the Science Fiction Book Club, but I did get Stephen King's The Stand from the Science Fiction Book Club. Now, The Stand is absolutely my favorite Stephen King book. Now, I know some of you are going to say, like, well, Rob, the ending, it's not the greatest ending in the world. I get it. I know. I understand. I've heard it a million times. I don't care. To be honest, I know. Well, Rob, you're so critical. I don't care. I'm just telling you, when I read that book, I was probably, I couldn't really tell you, but to be honest, actually, let's find out, shall we? Because I want to get a timeline before. I should have figured this out before I went on the show, but I'm gonna figure it out right now. Let's see. So The Stand, this makes sense. The Stand was published on October 3rd, 1978. So I joined the Science Fiction Book Club a year before that. And somebody might ask, what was the first book you got from the Science Fiction Book Club? Well, there was like a deal. So the first book that I got from the Science Fiction Book Club was actually Frederick Pohl's Gateway. And Gateway had this awesome I think it's John Berkey, a John Berkey painting. And it was like, get Gateway for like $1.99 or something. So I got that. One of the books I also got was Terry Brooks' The Sword of Shatner. I don't know what that means to all of you people, but that was one of the first books I got from the Science Fiction Book Club. But I did get Stephen King's The Stand from the Science Fiction Book Club, but I didn't read it right away because it was quite the formidable tome. And if memory serves, the Signet paperback, which I actually, to be honest, even though I had bought the hardcover from the Science Fiction Book Club, that was not the version that I first read. I got the Signet paperback because it had a badass cover. And that first Signet paperback was such a badass cover. And I bought that. You know what? I wonder if I can find that. Oh, you'll see why it's a badass cover. So even though I had owned the hardcover, I bought the paperback. The Signet cover paperback. Let me see if I can find it. Let's see if it's up there so I can. Oh, there it is. It's right there. There. Huh. Well, that wasn't exactly difficult to find. Oh, there it is. Okay, come on, man. Show me this. They have to make it hard. Why do they have to make it hard? Why does everything have to be hard? I wanted to get that Signet paperback cover. I wanted to see a good picture of it. There we go. Well, you can't really see the crow, but okay. This is a republishing of the original paperback cover. But I'm going to show it to you right now because you can see why. I saw this cover and I'm like, oh, I got to have that. Maybe you don't think it's as cool as I do, which, that's fair. But I really thought it was quite cool. So allow me to put it up here. It's taking me a long time. So I'm building this up now, and it's probably just not that interesting. But I'll show it to you anyway. So this was the cover of the original paperback. Now, what you cannot see is in the face there's a crow, because there was always crows because of death. But I had to have this. I just thought this was a badass cover. And so this was the actual paperback I read. And I believe it was 823 pages. If memory serves, that's how long it was. And I think I must have read this book 5 or 6 times. And it began a lifelong love of stories about pandemics. I would read any novel about a pandemic. Give me a pandemic. I loved it. I remember reading a book by a guy named Clancy Carlisle called Spore 7, which had a great cover. But I don't know why I thought of that particular book. Graham Masterton, who wrote The Manitou, wrote a book called The Plague, or just Plague. I loved stories about plagues. And that's maybe why I love zombie apocalypses too, because like Dawn of the Dead, it was kind of a plague. You got bit and you become a zombie. But anything to do with disease vectoring or whatever, The Stand is the end-all be-all of plague novels. 99% of the world's population is wiped out by a plague, by Captain Trips. And if you've read The Stand, there's so many things in The Stand that you will remember. Everybody knows Larry Underwood's song, Baby Can You Dig Your Man? He's a righteous man. You can't forget that. Randolph Flagg, the walking dude. Can't forget that. There's so many things in The Stand that I love. And again, I would say the experience of reading The Stand, it's like delicious. It's a book. I love calling books delicious. The Stand is one of those books. It is delicious. I loved all the characters. I loved everything about The Stand. And I just kept reading it. It's one of these books, you pick it up and you start reading it. You can't help it. And I think it's one of Stephen King's best books. When I was working at Warner Brothers in feature production in 1990, I remember something was shooting over the weekend. And in 1990, they asked who would volunteer and spend the day at the studio in the feature production office to answer the phone in case something happened, which they always had to, usually during shooting days, they had to have somebody in the office or whatever. But for whatever reason, I volunteered. Do you know why I volunteered? I volunteered because in 1990, they released the unexpurgated version of The Stand that had extra characters like the kid that was not in the original version of The Stand. And it was a great excuse. It was like 1,200 pages to read it. So when I was asked to come in on a Saturday and work at Warner Brothers, I would be the only person in the department. I'm like, hell yeah, man. Because I would sit and read. That's all I did was I read The Stand again, but I read the longer version. And I didn't finish the book, to be honest. I mean, it's 1,200 pages or something. So, but it was awesome. So I want to say in 1994, God, was that 26 years ago? In 1994, when Mick Garris directed the first miniseries version, the 4-night miniseries version of The Stand that was scripted by Stephen King. Of course, Molly Ringwald was in it. Rob Lowe was in it. Gary Sinise was in it. Jamie Sheridan played Randolph Flagg. Matt Frewer played the trash can man, who's a very pivotal person in the story. Ruby Dee was Mother Abigail. You've probably seen it. And by the way, if you haven't seen it, it was released on Blu-ray, I want to say last year, and they did a great job restoring it because it was shot on 16 millimeter to keep costs down, but they sort of redid the effects. I mean, it was done on the cheap, believe it or not. I mean, come on, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is in The Stand, which is pretty cool, actually. Laura San Giacomo's in it. Cora Nemec is in it. I have great big love for Mick Garris' The Stand. It's not the greatest thing in the world, but it's a pretty effective adaptation of The Stand. And if you were younger and saw it, it's one of those, I think, seminal television moments. I love The Stand. If I haven't conveyed that enough. So, my friends Gary and Edmund Enton, who they directed a film that still hasn't come out, still sitting on a shelf. It's a serial killer movie that we all made together. I edited the film for them, called My 11th, and they worked for me starting in the early aughts, or mid-aughts, on Superman Returns. They've now directed 4 features. They made an adaptation of the young adult novel Geography Club, which is pretty good, if you check that out, which I actually did the special features for on the DVD. So they love The Stand as much as I do. So we started this game that we always played when we would see one another, Cast The Stand. If they ever made a new movie, or if they ever made a new miniseries. And unfortunately, their father, Alvin Enton, my friend who I talked about, he passed away a couple of weeks back. He had COVID. He was their father, and he'd come out of the hospital, and then he died after complications from a stroke right after coming out of the hospital. But he also played, and when they would come out and visit us, when Lois and Alvin would come out from the East Coast, they would take us to the smokehouse, and most of the time when we had dinner at the smokehouse, and this went on for years, we played Cast the Stand, where we would throw out ideas about who should play what part, and we would discuss and debate them, and it always changed. Depending on who was the flavor du jour of that month, or who had just been in a movie. We're like, they would make a great Stu, or they would make a great Larry Underwood, And so we play this game for years and years and years. Well, as many of you know, there is a new. Actually, I think we're a month away today, 17th or 8th. It's the 18th of November. So perhaps we're a month away. Let's see. CBS, The Stand debut. I think it's 12/17. Okay, it was yesterday. So We're a month away, people. We are a month away from CBS All Access, their version of The Stand. Now I have to say, let's look up on the IMDb, because why not? Let's go to the IMDb. Now, we were pretty up on everybody who was in The Stand. Of course, James Marsden, great casting, plays Stu Redmond. Now, Jovan Adepo, who I wasn't not as familiar with as an actor, playing Larry Underwood. They made him black, which I think is great. I think it's great. Mother Abigail is Whoopi Goldberg, which was somebody we talked about from the very beginning in terms of cast. Amber Heard's Nadine Cross. Don't fuck with my disco. Alexander Skarsgård plays Randall Flagg. I'm excited about that. But anyway, pretty good cast of people that are in this film, in the miniseries. And I guess we're looking at, it's 9 episodes. And I'm excited about that. I think it's, 9 episodes. 9 episodes? The last time we saw, it was only 4 episodes, but each episode was 90 minutes, but we're still getting a much expanded script for The Stand. Well, one of the things that was not even on here, I mean, if you look down this list, even on the IMDb, I don't even see it. On here, they announced who is playing Trash Can Man. Matt Fuhrer was playing Trash Can Man, obviously, in the first the first Stand miniseries, Max Headroom, for those of you who don't know Matt Fuhrer. But they announced Ezra Miller. And of course, Ezra Miller, as I put him in the thumbnail, that is Ezra Miller as the Trash Can Man. And if you know The Stand, the Trash Can Man is a pivotal character. It's a favorite character that people have. And I love Ezra Miller. I loved him in We Have to Talk About Kevin. I loved him in The Perks of Being a Wallflower. I am a fan of Ezra Miller, and I think Ezra Miller as the Trash Can Man, I love this idea. I think it's fantastic. And, I pulled this off Dark Horizons. Justice League and Fantastic Beasts star Ezra Miller has been revealed as starring in a key role of the Trash Can Man in the upcoming CBS All Access miniseries adaptation of Stephen King's 1978 post-apocalyptic novel, The Stand. 2 photos of the character in action are also out. The story follows a global pandemic that kills more than 99% of the population and leaves 2 groups of survivors to battle for the soul of America. Trash Can Man is an unstable pyromaniac who joins a group of survivors in New Vegas led by the demonic Randall Flagg. Matt Fuhrer previously played a role in Mick Garris's miniseries adaptation. Showrunner Benjamin Cavell explains the role to EW and says Miller was very committed to it. He's a huge fan of the book and had fallen in love with his character and wanted to play it for a long time. On our first call, he described Trash Can Man as the embodiment of pyromania. The only thing this guy was capable of, and the only area in his life that he was comfortable were with the explosives and instruments of fire and destruction. He wears basically no clothes except for his extensive tactical gear, so he's just kind of in underwear and combat boots. The character has to be right on the edge of over the top, but no matter how strangely he's behaving, there's always this Ezra Miller soul as a twinkle coming through. I can't say enough about how brilliant he is in it. I got to tell you, that makes me, I'm stoked. I mean, Ezra Miller's the Trash Can Man. The reveal comes following months of speculation that goth rocker Marilyn Manson was secretly in the role. Cavell reveals they did talk to Manson early on about playing the Kid, the character who drives Trash Can Man to Vegas. However, that character wasn't included in the new adaptation. I'm actually glad to hear that because they probably just went back and adapted the original version of the book, which I think is great. I like the unexpurgated version, but like the original Dawn of the Dead that I dearly love, while the can cut, the longer cut is good, I still think the theatrical version is best. I feel that way about The Stand. I think the original version is the best version of the film. Whoopi Goldberg, James Marsden, Odessa Young, Joe Depp, Amber Heard, Henry Zaga, and Owen Teague co-star. The limited series premieres on CBS All Access on Thursday, December 17th. And I just love that. I think it's great. I'm so excited that they cast Ezra Miller as TRASHCAN Man. I just think that's, as a fan of the book, I think that's just such great casting. And I have to say, to be honest, I have not been very stoked with the promos. I feel like they haven't done. If you don't know what The Stand is and you didn't see, the original miniseries, we're talking, it's 26 years old now. So if you haven't seen that or you haven't read the book and you don't know what it is, aside from the fact that Stephen King wrote the book The Stand, I don't think the promos have conveyed enough about what The Stand actually is. And I'll tell you, probably I understand why. Because as detailed in the first miniseries, in the first part of the book, is all about Captain Trips, this super flu that escapes from a lab and wipes out 99% of the population. Well, we're in the middle of a global pandemic, and The Stand is about a global pandemic that kills 99% of the people in the world. So I'm sure that the CBS marketing executives were like, perhaps we should pull back on that aspect of the story. But the idea is you have to have everybody dying so the two groups of people that survive can one goes to Colorado. People are dreaming, the survivors are dreaming of Mother Abigail, this kindly old woman played by Whoopi Goldberg. And then the other, depending on, I guess, your disposition, you could call it, you're dreaming of Randall Flagg, the walking man, the dark man, who's actually supernatural. He's demonic. He's a shapeshifter. He follows around. He changes into a crow and flies around and watches everything that happens. And he's gathering his forces in Vegas. And it's about the final stand for the soul of American humanity. And I love it. But to hear Ezra Miller's TRASHCAN Man, and it hadn't been revealed. I love the fact that it had been kept a secret for a long time. And I thought, well, isn't that cool? And indeed, it is cool. So I'm just very, very, very excited about The Stand. I can't wait to see this. I love Ezra Miller. I don't want to belabor the point. But if you haven't read The Stand, again, it's a delicious book. I think you should all check it out. And why wouldn't you? Because, hey. Now, the next story that I wanted to bring to your attention, I also grew up, I guess this is the book episode of Robservations. I grew up reading Alan Dean Foster. And I know a lot of you know Alan Dean Foster because he was the man who really wrote the novelization of Star Wars. He wrote the book The Splinter of the Mind's Eye. He wrote books like the Tar-Aim Krang. He wrote the whole Humanx Commonwealth series, Flinks and Pip, pardon me. And he's been writing countless movie novelizations over the years. And I was lucky to be on a live stream with him. I think it was earlier this year. Huge fan of Alan Dean Foster. Well, I wanted to bring you guys something to the attention from the Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers of America. Now, I don't know when this was published, but it's recent because I got it off Twitter. Somebody tweeted this and wanted to know what I thought about it. So I figured I would read this to you. Disney must pay Alan Dean Foster. A message from the Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers of America President Mary Robinette Kowal. Last year, a member came to SFWA's grievance committee with a problem, which on the surface sounds simple and resolvable. He had written novels and was not being paid the royalties that were specified in his contract. The grievance committee is designed to resolve contract disputes like this. As part of our negotiating toolbox, we guarantee anonymity for both the writer and the publisher if the grievance is resolved. When it is working as president, I never hear from them. When talks break down, the president of SFWA is asked to step in. We do this for any member. In this case, the member is Alan Dean Foster, and the publisher is Disney. Here are his words. Dear Mickey, a contract is a contract. Dear Mickey, we have a lot in common, you and I. We share a birthday, November 18th. My dad's nickname was Mickey. There's more. When you purchased Lucasfilm, you acquired the rights to some books I wrote. Star Wars, the novelization of the very first film, Splinter of the Mind's Eye, the first sequel novel. You owe me royalties on these books. You stopped paying them. When you purchased 20th Century Fox, you eventually acquired the rights to the other books I'd written, the novelizations of Alien, Aliens, and Alien 3. You've never paid royalties on any of these, or even issued royalty statements for them. All of these books are still very much in print. They still earn money. For you. When one company buys another, they acquire its liabilities as well as its assets. You're certainly reaping the benefits of the assets. I'd very much like my minuscule, though it's not small to me, share. You want me to sign an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement, before even talking. I've signed a lot of NDAs in my 50-year career. Never once did anyone ever ask me to sign one prior to negotiations, for the obvious reason that once you sign, you can no longer talk about the matter at hand. Every one of my representatives in this matter, with many, many decades of experience in such business, echo my bewilderment. You continue to ignore requests from my agents. You continue to ignore queries from the SFWA, the Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers of America. You continue to ignore my legal representatives. I know this is what gargantuan corporations often do. Ignore requests and inquiries hoping the petitioner will simply go away, or possibly die. But I'm still here, and I'm still entitled to what you owe me. Including not to be ignored just because I'm only one lone writer. How many other writers and artists out there are you similarly ignoring? My wife has serious medical issues, and in 2016 I was diagnosed with an advanced form of cancer. We could use the money. Not charity. It's just what I'm owed. I've always loved Disney, the films, the parks, growing up with Disneyland TV show. I don't think Uncle Walt would approve of how you are currently treating me. Maybe someone in the right position just hasn't received the word, though after all these months of ignored requests and queries, that's hard to countenance. Or as a guy named Bob Iger said, the way you do anything is the way you do everything. I'm not feeling it. Alan Dean Foster, Prescott, Arizona. Mary Robinette Koal adds, in my decade with the organization, the fact that we are forced to present this publicly is unprecedented. So too are the problems. The simple problem is that we have a writer who's not being paid. The larger problem has the potential to affect every writer. Disney's argument is that they have purchased the rights but not the obligations of the contract. In other words, they believe they have the right to publish work but are not obligated to pay the writer no matter what the contract says. If we let this stand, it could set precedent to fundamentally alter the way copyright and contracts operate in the United States. All a publisher would have to do to break a contract would be to sell it to a sibling company. If they are doing this to Alan Dean Foster, one of the great science fiction writers of our time, then what are they doing to younger writers who do not know that a contract is a contract? To resolve the immediate issue regarding their breach of contract with Alan Dean Foster, Disney has three choices. Pay Alan Dean Foster all back royalties as well as any future royalties. Publication ceases until new contracts are signed and pay back all royalties to Alan Dean Foster as well as any future royalties. Publication ceases and pay back all royalties to Alan Dean Foster. This starts with a conversation. You have our contact information and offer to sit down with a Disney representative. Alan's agent, Vaughn Lee Hansen, and a SFWA representative. Regardless of choice, Disney must pay Alan Dean Foster. If you're a fan of Alan Dean Foster or believe that a writer's work has value, please let Disney know. If you're a writer experiencing similar problems with Disney or another company, please report your circumstances to us here. Hashtag Dear Mickey, hashtag Disney must pay. And there was a press conference that SFWA hosted with Alan Dean Foster earlier today, November 18th, 2020. If you want to watch this press conference, you can watch it here, and I'm going to put it in the live chat so you can watch it. Here's the thing. As many of you who've watched this channel for a long time have heard me say, and I got this probably from Bob Sugar, from Jerry Maguire, It ain't show friends, it's show business. And then, of course, the added thing I once heard, you don't get what you deserve, you get what you negotiate, which is where a contract comes in. When you negotiate something, you get a contract. It's as simple as that. And I've always said to people, if you're going to work in the entertainment business in any way, shape, or form, no matter what, even if you're just friends and you're getting together, you should quantify on paper what is expected of either one of you. And so if there's ever a dispute, you ever get mad at each other, this frequently happens, by the way, when you're collaborating, you have something on paper you can always point to and say, here's what we agreed to. And you weren't hot when you wrote it, presumably, and you both agreed to it. And what that kind of piece of paper does is it prevents you from allowing dust-ups or things that happen in friendships, especially when you're both creatively minded and you're working on something together. Having a piece of paper that explains just what you're expected to do and what you're expected to get is a simple way to diffuse almost any problem, because you point to that and you say, this is what I agreed to. And, when it comes to Alan Dean Foster, who really is, he didn't just write novelizations, he wrote many original novels. I remember reading a book he wrote called Catch-A-Lot, that, if you know it, it's got a clever title. But I'm a huge Alan Dean Foster fan, and Alan Dean Foster is correct. His Star Wars novelization is still in print. Now, I don't know how many books that Disney owns now, whether the Alien novelizations or the Star Wars novelization, how many he sells a year. But if you're selling something that he wrote, and he has a contract that states he deserves his royalties, I think it's pretty academic. So when I read this article, they asked us to, if you're a writer experiencing similar problems with Disney or another company, please report your circumstances here. And also, if you're a fan of Alan Dean Foster, which I am, I had almost every one of Alan Dean Foster's books that he published when I was growing up, his novelization and also his Hugh Manx Commonwealth books. I read them all. I love them all. If you're a fan of Alan Dean Foster or believe that a writer's work has value, please let Disney know. Disney, I'm a huge fan of yours too. I've worked for you. I don't understand why my feature-length documentary on the making of Tron is not on Disney+, but I was paid for my work. It's on the Blu-ray, but it would still be nice to put it on Disney+. I know it's standard definition, but I'm also a fan of Alan Dean Foster. So I would love to see that Alan Dean Foster is made whole, or at least he gets the residual payments that he is owed from his contract. It's only fair. And I think if there's people today still enjoying his novelization of Star Wars, I know it was published in 1976, but still, I know it's 44 years old, but if you're still making money off it, Mr. Foster could use that money. It's his money that he signed a contract for. Anyway, I just thought I would bring that up because I am a fan of Alan Dean Foster, and I am happy to do my part to spread that word. So please, Disney, do the right thing. That's all I ask. I mean, I think that's really, it's kind of only fair. So let's jump on and see what you guys have to say today. All right. This one comes from Torrin Atkinson. Torrin says, I don't have time to write a full letter, but with all the talk of Michael Bay, it made me think about how Hollywood can be a propaganda machine for military recruitment. I remember reading an article about this, although I couldn't find that article today. I did find one attached, and I'm wondering if it's something you might read, or at least a topic you have an opinion on. Well, I have no problem about reading this. This comes from CBC Radio, and it was posted on May 11th of this year. How Hollywood became the unofficial propaganda arm of the U.S. military. The Second World War launched Hollywood into a propaganda war that continues to this day. When the United States entered the Second World War, it wasn't just young men and women who enlisted. Hollywood also signed up, says Tanner Merlees, an associate professor of communication and digital media studies at Ontario Tech University. Where previously the burgeoning movie town had been producing frothy films made to distract and entertain, the onset of war meant that it could now get into the business of persuading Americans to support the war effort, says Merlees, who also has written several books about Hollywood's culture empire, including Hearts and Minds, the U.S. empire's culture industry. The U.S. Office of War Information had a dedicated unit exclusively to Hollywood. The Bureau of Motion Pictures, Mirrlees says. Between 1942 and 1945, the Bureau reviewed 1,652 scripts, revising or discarding anything that portrayed the U.S. unfavorably, including any material that made Americans seem oblivious to the war or anti-war. The head of the Office of War Information was Elmer Davis, who said the easiest way to inject a propaganda idea into most people's minds is to let it go through the medium of entertainment when they do not realize they're being propagandized, Mirrlees said. Hollywood had received its marching orders from the military, and during the war, he says, people who'd been trained to sell soap, cereal, and home appliances were now being enlisted by the state to sell war to the American public. Historians and other academics point out that arrangement was the beginning of a uniquely American mission that continues even now. Relationships forged between U.S. government agencies and Hollywood during the Second World War and Cold War shaped how stories about the military are still being told. Many of Hollywood's films are embedded in the American military and made to glorify the American military, Mirrlees said. No country in the world churns out as many images of itself as the military hero like the United States does. That's a unique cultural phenomenon. Films were, and are, the perfect vehicle for shaping popular opinion, largely because seeing a movie provides such a galvanizing shared experience. In the 1940s, something like 90 million Americans were going to the movies every week, said Dan O'Mara, a political science professor at the University of Quebec and the co-author of Movies, Myth, and the National Security State. We tend to forget in this age of the internet and Netflix that watching movies in a pre-television age, when movies were the most important aspect of public entertainment, that you would go sit in the dark surrounded by hundreds of others seeing the same films across America at the same time, and all of the emotions evoked on screen were shared communally. The U.S. government wanted to ensure that those shared communal feelings supported America's participation in the war, in part because it worried that its enemies would expose negative aspects of American society to Americans themselves, says Nick Cull, a professor of public diplomacy at the University of Southern California, who has written several books on the history of propaganda. Fueling that anxiety was the fact that until the Second World War, the U.S. had never been threatened from the outside, says O'Mara. There was this sense of security given its immense space and the fact that it was surrounded by seas on two coasts that no foreign power could realistically attack the United States. The advent of air power in Pearl Harbor changed that. Propaganda in the form of popular entertainment could help supplant panic, and doubt with pride and heroism. Though he never saw combat himself, John Wayne was the kind of Second World War hero, starring in countless films including They Were Expendable and Back to Bataan. Americans can tell the story of World War II in a way that makes them feel good about themselves. British people are the same. We love hearing stories about World War II because we think of ourselves as the good guy, Cull said. To me, there are many complexities in the story, including the treatment of Japanese Americans, for example, or the dropping of the atomic bomb, or the failure to understand the Holocaust and to react appropriately. But Hollywood manages to find ways of making Americans the good guys, Nazis the bad guys, and it's all right, and all is right with the world. That can be turned into a very affirming and very bankable narrative. The narrative continued with Hollywood's approach to later conflicts, including the Vietnam War. A case in point, another famous or infamous John Wayne movie, The Green Berets. What's little known is that Wayne personally wrote to U.S. President Lyndon Johnson to ask the government to help him make a propaganda film about the conflict in Vietnam, Mirrlees said. The Pentagon approval supplied props and military bases for the movie and retained final script approval. It was later learned that atrocities attributed to the North Vietnamese in the film were actually committed by American troops during the war. This imperative to cultivate a sense of external threat to America, bad guys from abroad, would continue to be financially bankable and politically expedient as a storyline throughout the Cold War as well. Where previously every major war involving the United States would be followed by dramatic cuts to military spending, there was, after Vietnam, the ascendancy of the idea of national security state, one that needed to stay on high alert, says O'Mara. And this began to inculcate with the American public this notion that, oh my God, there's a permanent and perpetual threat, that we are all threatened by something that bureaucrats called communism. Hollywood apparently held lessons for politicians as well. When U.S. President Harry S. Truman tried to get increased military spending through a hostile Congress, Senator Arthur Vandenberg advised him to scare the hell out of them. And Hollywood played the vital role in scaring the hell out of the Americans. Actually, this goes on. You know what? This is a long article, but I'm going to post this in the live chat, and you can read more of it. So here you go. And that's, look, we all know, I mean, even Walt Disney jumped on the propaganda bandwagon. He did. But I would have to say that part of the reason that propaganda was important during World War II is that we needed Americans behind the war effort. If Americans didn't jump in when they did, and they didn't go in wholeheartedly, and they didn't do their part, that war might have been lost, and we could have been living in a very different world today. So while I don't necessarily think propaganda is necessarily a good thing, I will say at the time, at least in World War II, it did its thing. But I would also like to point out Hollywood has made its share of anti-war films too, beginning with, say, Stanley Kubrick's Paths of Glory, and then his later Full Metal Jacket, bracketing his career. Coming Home, Apocalypse Now, Rambo, Uncommon Valor. The Vietnam War was not exactly popular in Hollywood, especially after the Green Berets came out. So, you know. This next letter comes from Omar94. Hi, Rob. November 17th, 2020, that would have been yesterday, is the 25th anniversary of Rob Reiner's The American President, which was released on November 17th, 1995. That was the prototype film for The West Wing. I love The American President. Michael Douglas plays the president, and of course, Sidney Ellen Wade, his girlfriend, is played by Warren Beatty's wife. You gotta love that. I'm a huge fan of that movie, and I think it's a great movie. Anyway, it's not a Rob Reiner movie people talk about much compared to something like The Princess Bride or When Harry Met Sally, but it's quite a charming film. I think so, too. A lot of the charm comes from the actors like Michael Douglas, Annette Bening, Martin Sheen, Michael J. Fox, and Richard Dreyfuss, who plays Bob Rumson. Douglas was very believable and acts as a president people wish was real. Dreyfuss was really good as his opponent, even though he's not in the film for a huge amount. Fox, in particular, was a real standout to me, especially during a scene in the Oval Office where he talks to Douglas about leadership. Speaking of that, the movie would not have worked without Aaron Sorkin's script. He was able to balance human drama, politics, and media really well. I also really liked the president's speech he wrote at the end of the film, which Douglas spoke. I typically avoid movies and TV shows with politics because I hate politics and don't like discussing it, but more importantly because I know absolutely nothing about it. However, there are exceptions, and like this film and Ivan Reitman's Dave as examples. All in all, The American President is a film worth checking out if anyone hasn't seen it. There's a real charm to it, a good script, and it has great acting performances. Thanks, and live long and prosper. I love The American President. I think it's great. I mean, Martin Sheen, of course, playing the best friend of the president, is all a warm-up to The West Wing. And Omar, if you've never seen The West Wing, get on that, son. If you like An American President, you're going to love The West Wing. But I really like An American President a lot. I think it's great. And Michael Douglas exhibits incredible humanity. And he really is the kind of president that, when I was growing up, I believe the president of the United States would be like Michael Douglas in the movie An American President. So there you go. This one comes from Julian Mushkin. Greetings to you, Rob, and my fellow imagination connoisseurs. I would like to change things up a bit today. I think we need to discuss the growing trend I'm seeing on YouTube of ASMR. That's right, ASMR, or Autonomous Sensory Meridian Response. This is the tingling feeling one may feel along the scalp and moving down the back of the neck and upper spine. It is often described as pleasant and can be very relaxing as well. It is commonly triggered by specific auditory or visual stimuli. I remember becoming aware of this sensation when I was young. As I watched someone creating art projects on a TV program, I would feel those tingles in response to their quiet narration. Sometimes the camera would focus on their hands while they quietly put their project together, and my skin would get goosebumps as I watched. Eventually, I also came across programs that were specifically paid commercial programs trying to sell you different things. I noticed that the voices of some of these presenters provoked that same pleasant response. I would sometimes make note of the salesperson, thinking to myself, they have the voice. Ironically, this was years before I ever read Dune, so I didn't appreciate the similarities in the term. As I grew older, opportunities to catch these inadvertent moments of ASMR were few and far between. Getting my haircut was sometimes a good opportunity to experience it. The Bob Ross Joy of Painting program was full of good ASMR content, and once I even experienced it at work as I watched a coworker write out some figures on paper, deliberately slow and precise. But I had no idea there was an actual name to describe the phenomenon, until, that is, this past spring. A friend on Facebook posted a link to a YouTube video of someone preparing a meal. They noted that this was good for ASMR. Okay, I'll check it out. I think to myself, and lo and behold, there was the tingle. Now I have a name for the sensation. Now I have access to lots of YouTube content claiming to be ASMR, and a lot of it there is. All right, I can't do anymore. In fact, the Wikipedia article I read stated that as of 2018, there were over 13 million ASMR videos on YouTube. That's an awful lot of potential tingles. So, of course, I dove in to see what I could find. At this point, I found that the genre predominantly consists of female presenters, with only a small handful of male presenters. Viewing the comments section on some of these, I saw an even mix of male and female viewers, so make of that what you will. The content itself often takes the form of a role play, as the presenter assumes the identity of a shopkeeper, a doctor, a hairstylist, a personal assistant, etc., who uses various visual and auditory stimuli to help you experience the tingles. Many of these videos have their stated purpose, using the stimuli to put the viewer in a state of relaxation to help reduce stress or even induce sleep. The stimuli usually consists of a soft-spoken or whispered commentary, accompanied by repeated use of certain hand gestures, as well as the use of particular props, which can produce necessary auditory cues that evoke the ASMR response. Many of these ASMR artists are producing very good content, in my opinion, demonstrating a high degree of imagination and very good production value as well. There are others, though, who seem to be relying a bit more on the prurient aspects of ASMR. Indeed, in trying to put a name to the experience, researchers struggled to find a description that would adequately convey the range of effects without including the more erotic and sexual side of the effect. Some ASMRists have deliberately delved into the erotic, producing a subgenre of video classified as ASMRotica. Many of these presenters have separate Patreon accounts, which I assume allows the subscribers to experience a more personal and explicit level of attention and role-play interaction with the host. So 13 million videos in 2018, and one would suspect a good deal more since then. Clearly, there is a desire for this content. Does this indicate that many people are unable to experience in their personal life? Certainly, I can imagine in this particular period of the pandemic, many people are feeling a lack of personal interaction that they would normally be able to experience in their social life. I know at this point you are perhaps wondering what this has to do with the Post-Geek Singularity. But it was as I pondered this interesting question that it occurred to me. People indulging in these externally stimulated sensations reminded me of another instance where people were searching for stimulation, because the movie I had seen this in was Fahrenheit 451, written by Ray Bradbury. That's tough on my voice. And first published in 1953, it is a dystopian novel which presents a future society where books are outlawed and firemen burn any that are found. The novel was adapted into a film in 1966 by Francois Truffaut with Oscar winner Oscar Werner and Julie Christie starring. This would be Truffaut's first color film and his only English-language film, featuring Nicholas Roeg as a cinematographer and a score by the incomparable Bernard Herrmann. The picture is redolent with the feel of the 60s. From the very beginning of the movie, we get a sense that there is something odd in this world. There are no credits. Rather, we're given the credits by a voiceover as the screen displays graphic images of houses with particular focus on television aerials. We soon see a person relaxing in their apartment suddenly run out after a phone call warns him of an impending raid. Arriving shortly after his exit, the firemen ransack the apartment, turning up books hidden all over the place. The books are dumped over the railing and onto the ground outside. As a crowd of onlookers gather, the pile of books is torched with a flamethrower. It is here that we meet Montag, our protagonist. It is also here that we see another strange thing, as it becomes evident that this scene, from the moment Montag dons his protective gear, lights the pile of books, and then doffs his gear, it's being played in reverse. Perhaps this is an attempt to convey the repetitive nature of the fireman's job. Later at the station, we witness another bit of film reverse as the firemen use traditional fire hose poles to ascend to the bunkhouse above rather than slide down. We see that Montag is very competent in his work, but also very compliant to authority. He is somewhat dull in demeanor and is perhaps one of the reasons Oscar Werner was chosen to play him, as I've always considered the actor somewhat lackluster in the movies I've seen him in. It's during Montag's commute home that we first start seeing evidence that some people are craving some form of external stimulation. Montag observes a female trolley rider repeatedly kissing a reflection in the window and also sees a young man rubbing his own shoulder in a distracted manner. The two are clearly self-absorbed with their actions. Once off the trolley, Montag meets Julie Christie's character of Clarice, a new neighbor of his. Their conversation serves both as a bit of exposition and backstory and as a catalyst to Montag's future actions as well. We are soon introduced to Montag's wife Linda, also played by Christie. There's no indication that the two characters are related in any way. Perhaps this is a blunt cinematic tool used to emphasize the sameness of Montag's life. In Montag's house, we see three more forms of external stimulation. We see the use of TV wall screens in the home, where TV personalities known as cousins can interact with the viewer in a limited manner. We also see the use of pharmaceuticals, probably a combination of uppers and downers and mood levelers, whose only method of identification is by color and number. Montag and Linda have a rather unfulfilling conversation, and later, after Linda takes a pill, the two of them engage in conjugal relations. It soon becomes clear to us that Montag is not leading a fulfilling life, and he soon becomes aware of it too. Repeated interactions with Clarice and incidents he witnesses on the job soon have him questioning his life. Eventually, he pockets one of the books, a copy of Dickens' David Copperfield that should be burned, takes it home, and late night pulls it from a hiding place. Haltingly at first, but with growing confidence, Montag reads every word he can find on every page. Like a starving man given a plate of food, he devours the story. That he could indeed read it all leads one to believe that this bookless state of affairs exists and is a fairly recent event. At some point within his lifetime, people were still learning how to read. Montag continues to steal more books to read. Meanwhile, his wife, obviously feeling unfulfilled in her life, overdoses on her pills, and Montag must call an EMT crew to help her. The EMT crew quickly gets on the job, and in a passing conversation with Montag, we find that occurrences of these overdoses are very common. Again, on his commute, Montag watches as another rider strokes her fur coat in self-absorbed ecstasy. During a house raid, Montag's group of firemen stumble upon a treasure trove of books, a veritable library hidden in the attic of the old house. It is here that the captain explains why all books were outlawed. Too many ideas put into everyone's head would eventually make everyone unhappy with their lot in life. The state wants everyone to be happy. To be happy, everyone must think alike. In this society, the individual is viewed as a nonconformist and labeled antisocial. The private life is suspect, and books are seen as part of that private life. The lady who owns the house chooses to immolate herself on the pile of books in her hall rather than be taken by the authorities. While this shocks the firemen, Montag is quite shaken by the event. It is during this raid that the young and ambitious fireman Fabian witnesses Montag pocket a book into his duffel bag. Montag's days are numbered. At the station, Montag discovers that he can no longer use the fire pole to go up and must use the stairs, a bit of symbolism that he is indeed changing. He does not fit in. Arriving home to find his wife engaged with a group of her friends in inane, pointless conversation, Montag turns off the wall screen and accuses them of being zombies, unaware of what is really going on in the world. He tells them that they are just killing time instead of living life. He forces them to listen as he reads to them. The passage causes one of Linda's friends to start crying as she confronts emotions she kept bottled up for years. Linda's friends accuse Montag of being cruel for causing one of them to cry. Linda is mortally embarrassed as her friends leave. That same night, Clarice is forced to flee her home and go on the run to avoid being arrested by the authorities. She manages to meet with Montag in secret, and she tells him about the book people, a hidden group of people who keep their books alive by memorizing the books and becoming living books. Montag decides he must resign from the force, but the captain convinces him to go on one last call. It turns out to be Montag's home. They arrive just as Linda is leaving for good. The captain forces Montag to uncover all the books from their hiding places so they can burn them. Before he lights the books, Montag destroys his bedroom and wall screen, symbols of the empty life he was living with Linda. In a tussle with the captain, Montag ends up killing him as he lights the pile of books with a flamethrower. Montag goes on the run and eventually eludes his pursuers and finds the book people. He views his capture and death on television, the event staged to convince the populace that there's no place for nonconformists in their society. Montag finds Clarice with the community of people and takes his place amongst them as he commits the contents of his one surviving book to memory. Fahrenheit 451 uses several salient ideas to contemplate. One notion that prolonged deprivation of intellectual stimulation may eventually manifest in a need to overcompensate for that lack with the use of various external stimuli. Another is the very nature of what the government of Montag's society was attempting to do by controlling how the populace behaved and thought. State-based censorship was certainly a theme the author Bradbury was concerned about. Written in a period when the United States was struggling with McCarthyism, 1953 was only 20 years removed from a period when the Nazis in Germany were burning books they deemed ideologically subversive. Are the themes in Fahrenheit 451 relevant today? Certainly they are. In these days of social media where clashing ideologies do battle, and those that do not properly endorse the latest progressive cause celeb are threatened with cancel culture, I would say those themes are more than relevant. As you say, Rob, you can't remove one tyranny just to replace it with another. It didn't work in Montag's world, and it won't work in ours either. Just some food for thought, my fellow imagination connoisseurs. Live long and prosper, Julian. I loved how you turned a whole article or letter about ASMR into an article about Fahrenheit 451. Well done, Julian. Thank you for that. I love that book. Everybody should read it. So there you go. This is from Stay, S-T-A-E, Stay. Hi, Rob. I was wondering if you've come across the Variety article about Wonder Woman 84 possibly going to HBO Max in January 2021 rather than waiting around until next summer to release it in cinemas. Also, in other news, moving to the CW Arrowverse, they have announced a Wonder Girl, I read that, live-action show, and it isn't even going to be Cassie Stansmark or Donna Troy. It's going to be a new character called Yara Flor. I'm not trying to be sexist or racist because I'm not either of those things, and I'm from Gibraltar, so I both understand and speak Spanish, and in other words, I'm bilingual to a degree anyway. But the way they announced the character is Latino, so when I found out about it, it got me wondering why they're not doing it with previously mentioned Cassie Stansmark or Donna Troy. I also wonder why they're doing this because won't it just drive people away like it did with Batwoman after that aired? Well, first of all, you asked two questions. Wonder Woman, if the movie costs between $150 and $200 million, I think they have to release it theatrically. Otherwise, they're going to take a bath. And after Tenet, Warner Brothers doesn't want to take a bath on Wonder Woman. But you know what? We live in a new world. So what do I know? I could be wrong. It's tough call. Tough call. As Donna Troy, I love Donna Troy. I love New Mutants. I love the New Teen Titans. I'm a huge fan. I love the George Perez, Marv Wolfman run. It was one of my favorite comics growing up. And I love Donna Troy. Who is Donna Troy? I love Donna Troy. And I loved her husband. I love the character. But I think the problem with these other characters is they do have a lot of baggage and they might want to use them on Titans or use them somewhere else. So I think that coming up with a new Wonder Girl character is I could see it's pretty shrewd. I don't think it interferes with the other characters because it's just another iteration of Wonder Girl. But it does beg the question, does she fit into the other Wonder Girl mythologies? I don't know. I understand why they're doing it, but again, it could be great stories well told. That's all I'm looking for. Doing diversity for diversity's sake, I don't know. I just hope it's a good show. So, yeah. Now let's see what everyone else is saying. I wanted to jump over and see what everyone else is saying in the chat. I guess I could have put that there. So, oops. I don't know why you can hear my phone ringing on my computer, but you can. Throg is here. Throg Targaryen, the Lost King, sends in a tip and says, last night's show was excellent. On last night's show, we had the final of our James Bond retrospective on Whining About Movies, where we had our guest, Claude, one half of Claude and Candida, the official couple of the Burnettwork. Claude was previously on our show when we discussed Do the Right Thing, and he asked to come on Skyfall, and he made some very compelling arguments that brought me around on Skyfall being a better movie than I thought it was. So that's pretty cool. Throg says, last night's show was excellent. Both Claude and you, from about 55 minutes to about 67 minutes, was an example of why your shows are interesting. The exchange between the three of you, I won't forget the ace, the arbiter of cinematic excellence, was just incredible. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Well, thank you, Throg. I mean, you've been very supportive of this channel. I'm glad you enjoy the content more than anything, because that's basically what I have to offer. And if you thought I sucked, well, that would bum me out. Willow sends in a tip, and she says, I have to admit, I'm a bit disappointed that Dieter Bastian didn't say shiny when holding up a physical media case. Also, this must be the first time that I've seen the words African Kung Fu Nazis together. Will Dieter do a review of the movie? Well, for those of you who have not watched our new show on the Burnettwork, Let's Get Physical Media, why haven't you? Get on that, son. And people will know that Dieter Bastian and I, who we do the show together, we do talk about what came out. Physical media releases came out for the week. And I think I'm going to drop the new episode tomorrow. I'm going to try and get them all up on Tuesday. I've just been so busy. When new physical media comes out, I hope I can get up, because we do talk about it. And one of the things that Dieter had bought in Germany, one of their beautiful German media books, was he found a movie called African Kung Fu Nazis. And apparently it was made in Ghana. One of those quickie, there's an African, many young Africans are making movies and action films, and they're full of gore, and apparently African Kung Fu Nazis is one of them. And Dieter bought it, and yes, Willow, he does talk about it on the new episode. And I don't want to say anything until you get that, but hopefully you'll be able to see it in the next couple days. So yeah, it should be out. So yes. Nick Markins is here. Nick Markins sends in a super chat, and Nick asks, Nick asks, hello, Rob. Have you ever seen the 1985 film Life Force? And if so, what do you think about it? I saw Life Force opening weekend in the theater, based, of course, on the book Space Vampires. I am, in fact, a big fan of Life Force. And for those of you who might not know, the Scream Factory version of Life Force that came out there's two versions of Life Force. There's the theatrical version that was released here in America, and then there's a much longer, I think it's like 20 minutes longer, international version that I prefer, that's out on that Scream Factory Blu-ray. I actually interviewed Tobe Hooper for the Blu-ray and was there recording his commentary for the movie. So I got to sit and talk with Tobe Hooper about the making of Life Force, and I enjoyed it very much. I'm glad. You didn't say if you're a fan, but I would assume you are. I love the film, and for all of its goofiness, for what it is, and not what it isn't. I love it. I love all of it, and yeah, how can you not? It's it's like a Quatermass movie meets Alien. It's crazy, but I like it. Janine, is it Janine? I think it's Janine. Janine Hammerstrom sends in a tip and says, hey, Rob, so where do you come down on Kubrick's The Shining? I read the book when it came out and loved it, but the movie left me cold, no pun. Yes, there were the great tracking shots, the over-the-top Jack, but the film did not rock me. Ooh, that's from Mr. and Mrs. Yerkman. Wow, so I hear directly from you. I think it's Janine, right? I don't want to get it wrong. That's a good question, Janine. Do I think Kubrick's Shining is a great adaptation of King's novel? I do not. But I think it's kind of its own thing. And I thoroughly do enjoy The Shining. I do. But I don't think it's one of Kubrick's greatest films. A lot of people think it is. I don't. I think The Shining is Kubrick's one and only attempt to make a B movie. I think that's what he's doing. I think it's like a B horror film. But it's given an A-list polish. And I do like it, though. I like Nicholson, and I do like a lot of the imagery, and I think it's good. But it's not like the book. And I found it interesting that a movie like Doctor Sleep was both an adaptation of the sequel novel to The Shining and also a sequel to the movie The Shining, I thought it worked well. I really like Doctor Sleep, but I like The Shining. I do. But it's if I would love to see a well, maybe not. I mean, Mick Garris did a Shining miniseries. Do we need another movie? I don't know. Maybe not. Tim is here. Tim the Spider Monkey says, the first Stephen King book I read was Eyes of the Dragon. My grandfather thought it was a good gateway into King's work, knowing how much I love fantasy books. What are your thoughts on it? I gave it to my nephew as his first King book. I liked Eyes of the Dragon. I didn't love it. I thought it was good, but again, it wasn't, it wasn't the kind of Stephen King I was looking for. But yeah, I liked it. Eric Gant says, saw King's The Stand in the show title and decided to drop a quick Long Days and Pleasant Nights. Members of the quartet will get the reference. That's very nice of you to do that, Eric. So yeah, thank you for that. And but is that members of the quartet will get the difference? Long Days and Pleasant Nights is also an IPA. Yeah, that's a Midworld greeting from whatchamacallit? The Gunslinger, right? Yes. Charlie Bronson is here. Hi, Rob. I'm curious to know your opinion. Do you think Charlie Hunnam is a good choice for James Bond? Somebody asked me this the other day. I think he has a gentleman charm to him and a badass figure. I think. What do you think? Also looking forward to your next physical media video. Well, that will be shortly. Yes. And that will be coming out soon. Charlie Hunnam, he doesn't have the refined elegance that I think Bond should have. I think he could be good as the character, but I think he's not. I just don't think he's refined enough. I could be wrong, though. Justin Toner says, Rob, I saw this story show up on Twitter not too long ago. Disney's not paying Alan Dean Foster for his work on the Star Wars novelizations he's done. Here is the link. Well, Justin, as you might have seen on the show, I covered that. And that was something I wanted to cover because I want to support Alan Dean Foster. I believe in his work. Eric Gant says, a weird coincidence. The Stand, which involves a global pandemic, is part of King's Dark Tower series. I know. In the Dark Tower, the number 19 carries a lot of significance. Freaky. Well, of course, I believe Randall Flagg appears in the Dark Tower. The Dark Tower is kind of there's part of all of Stephen King's stories in what happens in the Dark Tower. Mr. Jones sends in a super chat and says, breaking Wonder Woman 84 theater and HBO Max December 25th. Is that true? I don't know. I still think they're going to hold off on Wonder Woman. They're going to try and give it a theatrical release. I mean, I could be wrong, but I think they really are. Nick Paris says, what's up, Rob? So, Rob, nothing has pleasantly surprised me more during the apocalypse from an imagination connoisseur point of view than to see comic stores still standing. So I want to salute all the comic store owners for holding the line against COVID. Well, our friend Jacob Fudge and his comic store Comic Relief, I haven't heard from Jacob in a while. I hope he's doing well. I hope his comic book store is still around. We shall see. Jason Tonner says, Rob, for whining, will you guys be watching the director's cut of Star Trek The Motion Picture or the theatrical version? The director's cut. Also, after Austin Powers, you follow up with Top Secret, which has been a favorite of mine since I was a kid. Chocolate Mousse is da man. Indeed. Drex, son of Martok, sends in a tip and says, I don't take orders from shapeshifters or their Cardassian lapdogs. I love that. I love that very much. David Hilton sends in a super chat and says, what's your opinion of Larry Cohen's work? I miss Larry Cohen because I used to sit with him every year at the Saturn Awards. Any favorites? Also, did you see The Other Side of the Wind, and what did you think? That's interesting. I did see The Other Side of the Wind. I thought it was okay. I mean, I wonder if it was finished with Wells around, if it would have been the same movie. I thought it was okay. But Larry Cohen, I'm a huge fan of Larry Cohen. People might wonder who Larry Cohen is. Larry Cohen is the man who wrote and directed movies like It's Alive, or Q, Quetzalcoatl, or The Stuff, or one of my favorites, and it might be my favorite Larry Cohen movie, God Told Me To. But Larry Cohen he made Black Caesar as well. And Larry Cohen was not, he was not just a B movie director either. He was actually a fairly accomplished screenwriter, and he's not with us anymore, obviously. But I mean, if you go and he wrote an episode of NYPD Blue. He wrote Bestseller, which was a James Woods movie, and with Brian Dennehy and Victoria Tennant. That was a very respectable movie. But he wrote a lot of different movies. He wrote Guilty as Sin, directed by Sidney Lumet, Rebecca De Mornay, and Don Johnson and Stephen Lang. Not a great movie, but he did write it. So, yeah. No, I'm a fan of Larry Cohen's, and he was a really nice guy. He was a lot of fun to hang around with. Jeff Yerke's here. Hey, Rob, that was me a moment ago, not Janine Hammerstrom. Oh, okay. Also, I'm designing on the new book cover, so fingers crossed, the Yerk Man. Well, we start the for those of you who are doing an anthology book, everyone should send their story in between 5,000 and 10,000 words, and the book is called The Imagination Connoisseurs. It is going to be a anthology, and whatever that means to you, we'll get more into that later. Mark C. Mark, thoughts on the George Hamilton classic Zorro the Gay Blade? I did see that when it came out, and I remember not liking it very much. It was kind of funny. I didn't think it was that funny. I didn't think it was funny enough. And Mark C. then goes on to say thoughts on the Jack Palance classic Hawk the Slayer. Okay, there was a whole slew of movies like Hawk the Slayer or Yor the Hunter from the Future that were kind of like these bargain basement fantasy films, and I was not a fan, Mark. Not a fan. I'm not a fan of Hawk the Slayer. I saw it, but I didn't love it. I was not a fan of these movies. I mean, I guess they all kind of came out in the wake of Conan the Barbarian, and they were trying to bring back sword and sorcery movies. I think my favorite one of all those, the cheap ones, was Albert Pune's Sword and the Sorcerer. But yeah. Timula the Spider Monkey sends in a tip and says, after Eyes of the Dragon, I read The Stand and then The Dark Tower. I just assumed Flag was going to be in everything King wrote. He should have. Anyway, so yeah. I'm not laughing at you, Tim. I'm laughing at John, who says, hi, Rob. Just curious, which malted beverage pairs so well with the black cherry coffee AHA featured in today's 6 of 1? So for those of you who don't know, I am a huge fan of AHA sparkling water. I drink a lot of it during these shows. It's got this is black cherry and coffee. I mean, two great tastes that taste great together. I was actually, and I did pop another one. I have, this is from Breckenridge Brewery, Fine Colorado Ales. It is a vanilla porter that I was drinking. A vanilla porter. It's really good. Colorado, I did not know until I was in Fort Collins, Colorado, just how good. I didn't realize there were so many breweries in Colorado and distilleries. They make some good brew up in Colorado. Alexander Wilson sends in a tip and says, Variety just published that Warner Brothers, oh my God, Variety just published that Wonder Woman 84 is going to get a same-day theatrical and an HBO Max release on Christmas 2020. Campia was just talking about this earlier today. Your thoughts? Is that true? Oh my God, really? Hang on. Let me see. I don't know if that's true. Oh, it certainly is. Wow. Okay, this was published at 3:40 p.m. in the afternoon. Let's let me jump into this. Let's see, people. I will jump into this right now and read this. Breaking news. I didn't know anything about this. I never thought this would happen, to be honest. Never thought this would happen. Let's look at this article. Man, all I see, I read, oh, this is, okay. Here we go, folks. Here we go, yo. Again, boy, this article broke 3:39, so this is a little more than an hour old. Wonder Woman 1984 going to theaters and HBO Max on Christmas Day. Warner's has made the whole day and date theatrical HBO Max release official. Warner Media CEO Jason Kilar released a note about the media conglomerate's wild decision. Wonder Woman 84 gets an international theatrical release whenever theaters are open on December 16th. HBO Max isn't charging an additional amount to subs like Disney did with Mulan. Meyer has the movie dated for a December 25th release in China as well. The first Wonder Woman made $90.5 million there. Very interesting if Cinemark and AMC are going along with this. They're at least both getting a cut of the PVOD on the Universal titles they're playing on a truncated window. Are exhibitors getting a share of HBO Max revenues? I bet they're not. Again, this is a driver for the streaming service. Last time we had a holiday streaming and theatrical release was Sony's controversial comedy, The Interview with James Franco and Seth Rogen. Big exhibitors didn't play it, but indies did, and the pick was available for purchase on streaming outlets. The end result at the domestic box office was an atrocious $6.1 million, and you got to figure it'll be worse for Wonder Woman 1984 because under 3,000 locations are currently open in the U.S.-Canada market. Kilar mentions that Warner Media did this out of their belief in the theatrical experience and, to that end, the importance of exhibitors. I don't think so, at least here in the United States. If the studio really cared about exhibition, they'd wait this pandemic out and release a very important IP when it's completely safe to do so, meaning next summer after the vaccine. This does not benefit exhibition as they'll be competing with HBO Max subscribers. Why pay $15 per ticket when you can just shell out $15 for the month and have a whole living room full of people watch Wonder Woman 84? As we navigate these unprecedented times, we've had to be innovative in keeping our business moving forward while continuing to super serve our fans, says Ann Sarnoff, Chair and CEO, Warner Media Studios and Networks Group, which includes Warner Brothers Pictures. This is an amazing film that really comes to life on the big screen, and working with our partners in the exhibition community, we will provide that option to consumers in the U.S. where theaters are open. We realize that a lot of consumers can't go back to the movies due to the pandemic, so we'll also want to give them the option to see Wonder Woman 1984 via our HBO Max platform. What do I think about this? I think it sucks, honestly, Alexander. I think this blows. I think this is short-sighted, especially when apparently there is going to be some kind of a vaccine coming down the road. I think this is a huge blow to exhibitors. This is also a movie that could potentially make $1 billion theatrically, and I don't understand this decision at all. To be honest, I'm actually shocked by this. They're putting it in theaters and day and date on HBO Max. I think that is monumentally short-sighted and dumb, and I think it really betrays theater owners, exhibitors. I think it's a kick in the teeth, and it's a kick in the teeth to the entire exhibition industry. And I don't think they should do it, to be honest. I think it's lame. Mr. Jones goes on to say, "It's confirmed, Rob. Look it up now." I think it. I can't believe they did this. Nick Parrish says, "One more thing, Rob. When I saw my local comic shop was still open, I decided to go in and browse and to pick up a one-shot of Namor. This made me wonder. I wondered why Namor, out of all the Marvel characters, hasn't cameoed in a movie yet. It's a rights issue with Namor, and I believe it's under the same. I think they got it back." And now they can use Namor. There's talk of making him the villain in the next Black Panther movie because at one point Namor does flood Wakanda, but I'm not sure. But I think it's mostly a a rights issue, but I think it's been alleviated and they can use Namor. It might be a Hulk situation with Universal. I'm not entirely sure, to be honest. I'm sorry. I'm still reeling from this news about Wonder Woman. Now I'm going to switch from sparkling water to my nice vanilla porter. Boy, I think that really sucks. I think that Warner Brothers, it's lame. Shame on you, Warner Brothers. HBO day and date. See, here's the thing. People are not going to, they're not, even if $15 a month, if you figure that this Wonder Woman movie could have made $1 billion theatrically, and after all is said and done, after marketing and everything, and after splitting revenue, let's say the studio could have made $300 or $400 million off a theatrical release of Wonder Woman. They're not going to make that. They're not going to get $300 or $400 million worth of HBO Now subscribers. I think it's unfortunate. I liked seeing Wonder Woman on the big screen, but I don't like this because it's our future, and our future is not to be able to see movies in the theater, and I don't like that. I think it's incredibly frustrating, and I like movie theaters, and this is the very kind of movie that at least movie theaters would stay alive for. And I do think, man, it's a betrayal. It's a betrayal. Timbula the Spider Monkey goes on to say, this will be the end of blockbuster films. Who's going to spend $200 million on a film if they can't get anywhere near their money back? Well, it really depends. Maybe somebody will prove that the $200 million movie is viable because that's how many subscribers they get. Netflix is talking about making a $200 million movie with the Russo brothers. Mark C. says, I disagree. If Wonder Woman waits till summer and a vaccine, there will be no theaters to exhibit in. Well, that's probably true, too. I mean, look, it's a tough situation. It's a really hard situation. And remember, they're paying interest fees on that, so they probably owe a lot, and they need to start getting their money back. I get it. But it could, I don't like to be a doomsayer. COVID's going to cause a lot of things to evolve. We'll see. I mean, a lot of businesses have been lost. A lot of bars, a lot of restaurants are gone for good. Chain stores are gone for good. We've lost so much because of this pandemic. But yeah, I just don't think this is a good thing. Wonder Woman was one of the big tentpole movies. That's crazy. But again, this is not something that was taken lightly. Warner Brothers really was looking long and hard at this. Wow, it's going to be interesting to see how this shakes out. But that means I guess we are going to still get Wonder Woman in less than a month and a half. I mean, I want to see it. I just wish I could have seen it in a theater. See, the problem is, if movies like Wonder Woman, if $200 million movies are looked at in the same breath as, say, an episode of The Boys, and then you get the same amount of entertainment value from The Boys, is anyone going to go back and make movies like Wonder Woman anymore? Like Tim said, I don't know. What a bummer. Well, anyway, I think on that note, because now I'm annoyed, I'm going to end. I started out all excited. Ezra Miller playing Trash Can Man, and now we have to end on this bummer note when we see more movie theaters. The whole exhibition business gets one in the teeth, man. What a bummer. Anyway, I want to thank everybody for watching. I want to thank my moderating staff. I want to thank Mike Bodden. I want to thank Greg Smith. I want to thank The Richard. I want to thank Joshua Levesque, Robert Pariso. I don't know who else is here, but I want to thank you for being here. Thank you, moderators. I want to thank everybody who supports the channel generously through tips and super chats and all of those things, and mostly letters. Thank you for the letters. And people that are becoming, we almost have 100 members. And when we reach 100 members, I'm going to start doing special membership chats and things like that. And we'll be doing some interesting additional programming for members. I want to thank you for supporting the channel in that way. It won't change anything here, but you'll still be getting the same programming from me, from Dieter Bastian, from Elizabeth, the ace for whining about movies. We'll still be doing that. And by the way, can you believe whining about movies is approaching episode 100? That's crazy. Anyway, that's all thanks to you guys. So thanks very much for that. So remember, every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear. And all you have to do is listen. And with that, I would say, have a better day. And God damn it, Warner Brothers, what's your problem? Seriously. I mean, I know what it is. I get it. I understand you're between a rock and a hard place, but movies. I don't want to lose going to movies. I'd miss that so much. Anyway, we'll see what happens. Fingers crossed.